Hello everybody, welcome back. So I'm going to do a bit of pricking out today. I've got tomatoes that need sort of moving on. I've got Pak Choi that needs moving on. I'm going to sow some more lettuce, and I need to make sure that everything's ready for the cold weather that we're going to be getting, because I've now put out a whole tray of onions in the ground, and although onions are hardy, I'm going to put some fleece over them, so I'll show you how I do that as well. So I'll get the camera set up and we'll make a start. So if you've watched the channel before, you'll know that I dropped a tray of salad leaves and it landed upside down, and I aborted the tray basically, but there are just a couple here that are still going, so I'm just going to very quickly put those in their own little pots just to start off with. I don't know if they're going to be iceberg or mixed salad at the moment, because I can't tell when they're at this stage, but they're there, so I'm not going to waste them. We'll put them in there, I'll give them a water later, and they'll go with the other salad leaves that I've got growing in pots. So we're going to get down to about 4 degrees here over the next few days, and the onions will probably be fine at that temperature, but I'm going to put a bit of fleece over them just to be sure, and I'm going to make sure that everything in here is okay as well, because down here I've got kohlrabi, chard, and I will have the Pak Choi once we've pricked it out and potted it on, and they're all comfortable at cool temperatures. But what I am going to do is perhaps put some fleece over those as well, so in the greenhouse with some fleece on top. So I'm just going to very quickly sow these mixed salad. Start another tray off. That's interesting. There was some loose in the packet, but there's also this here. I think it's just some of them have come out of the little envelope. And I've got a pallet collar bed up near the back door to the kitchen, so I want to basically just fill that with lettuce and perhaps some spring onion. So all of these will get put in there, and when it starts to get overcrowded, we'll just eat them when they're really small. There we go. So I will take this tray up to the house and put it in the conservatory, which is unheated, so it's pretty cool. I'll give it a water later as well because it's quite dry, but just to get them to germinate I'll put them up there, and it probably stays around 10 degrees, that room, on a night time. So Pak Choi coming on nicely, so I'm going to put those in their own individual little pots, the same as I did with the kohlrabi and the chard, and exactly the same as before. Just take them out as gently as you can and put them in. So 4 degrees is pretty cool for a lot of plants, so beware if you have things outside or in the greenhouse, unheated greenhouse or a polytunnel, you may need to go protect them a little bit. we haven't got much out at the moment, so I don't have a lot to do to protect everything. So we've got another live this Sunday. Basically, what are you growing and sowing? So 7:30, there is a link around on YouTube and on the channel if you want to come along. And great chat participation on the last two, so that's much appreciated. Everybody's got their own hints and tips, and it really helps. This compost is really quite dry, so I'll water these once I've moved them on. It's sat in here for a week or so. I keep seeing that we're going to get snow. I keep seeing it on the sort of news on my laptop and stuff, but whenever I check the forecast, it isn't saying we're going to get snow. I think a lot of these headlines are just to get clicks, aren't they? So my tomatoes that we're going to do in a minute, I sowed them probably 2 weeks ago, and some of them are just starting to grow their true leaves, but they're just in a seedling tray, so I want to get them moved on, and they will obviously go back up to the house. I'm not going to leave those down there. South facing window, as much light as I can give them. I've only got one more pot, so we can only do one more seedling. We'll do the strongest one. There we go. So I'll give those a water after. In fact, I've got the watering can here. I'll do it now. Got no rose on it, so I'll use my hand as a bit of a filter. There we go. And then most of these are weeds actually, so we'll get rid of them. Pak Choi, and then that can go in there. Put some more potting on. Get rid of the weeds. So we'll move that along there. That's going to go to the house. Okay, tomatoes. So I'm going to put the tomatoes in one of these. And these are the tomato seedlings that I've got. There are a few weeds in there as well, so we'll get rid of the weeds first of all so we can see what's going on. That's a tomato. So we've got Crimson Crush on this first row here, and then we've got Tumbling Tom and Red Cherry, and then one Ox Heart. I only had one seed and it has come up, so that's a result. So we'll do the Crimson Crush first, and just the same as potting on anything else or pricking out anything else. And with tomatoes, they're a bit like brassicas in that you can plant them deeper each time, so, and they'll just grow more roots off the stem, so don't worry about planting them too deep. And these have been on a south facing window in an unheated propagator, so a couple of weeks, they've not done too bad. The secret now is to keep them warm and give them as much light as possible. When I say warm, if I could keep them at say 12 degrees or a bit warmer, that would be okay. What I don't want is them going down below 10 degrees for very long, if I can help it. So on the really cold night, they may end up coming into the living room, not the conservatory, just at night, to give them a bit more heat. And that's the problem, constantly moving plants around. But they should do okay in these little pots for a couple of weeks, and then it'll be time to move them on again, pot them on. And depending on the weather will depend whether they come down to the greenhouse or cold frame, or they stay indoors. Now, I like to prick things out and pot them on early when they're still really small. I just find they seem to don't have as much shock or anything like that. I think when plants get bigger and you start uprooting them, they can have a few more problems. That's handy. Exactly the right number of pots for the Crimson Crush. And what you notice is I'm putting them all in the same tray, and that's because tomatoes, all the tomatoes, like the same sort of conditions, whereas my colder, hardier plants are in another tray. So kohlrabi, chard, Pak Choi are all in another tray. Don't mix the two up. Don't put tender plants and hardy plants in the same tray, because when you want to change their environment, that makes it a bit more challenging. I had this last year, I think. That's a Tumbling Tom. It's just that variety. That one's got 3 seedling leaves by the looks of it as well. There's a few of them there. So I'll get all these tomatoes potted on, and I'll come back and show you what we're going to do next. So there we go, we've got Crimson Crush, Tumbling Tom, like nearly a row and a half of Tumbling Tom. Grew those last year, a really nice tomato. We've got one ox heart, which is a beefsteak variety, and we've got a row of red cherry. So I think we're going to be okay for tomatoes this year. I'm just going to have to find space to grow them all. But we are running out of space with everything at the moment, but we'll find a way. We always do. So these crops I'm going to leave down here in the greenhouse over the cold period. Like I say, 4 degrees we're forecast. If it was going to get down to freezing or lower, I might take more action, take them indoors overnight. But what I'm going to do is leave them down here, unheated greenhouse, and I'm going to cover them over with a bit of fleece as well. So we've got kohlrabi, chard, pak choi, and lettuce. They are the crops that will be staying down here over this cold snap. So and that's just to give them a bit of extra protection. Now, it isn't actually going to get colder until tomorrow night, but I've got a really big day tomorrow, a lot of travelling to do, and I don't know what time I'm going to get back, and rather than risk it, I thought I'd get them covered up and protected now. Right, let's go and look at other things we need to check before the cold weather. So having spent what must be at least 2 hours, maybe a bit more, planting out well over 100 onions, I am going to cover them up. Now, onions would probably be okay at 4 degrees, but for the time it's going to take me to cover them, and bearing in mind that they are very small, only got a couple of leaves, most of them, it's not a big effort, and it's going to take me 10 minutes to put some fleece over these, and I can leave that fleece on then for, well, until they need watering, basically, although you can water through the fleece, but or I need to check the slug pots or anything, you know, it can stay on there for several weeks. It really doesn't matter. So all I'm going to do is, using a small garden cane, I'm just going to push that in to the ground. I'm going to put a pot bottle upside down, and all that's going to do is keep the fleece off the leaves of the plant, and because it's nice and rounded, it isn't going to damage the fleece. In the past I have used plant pots, and I find that they always seem to move around, and then the cane will come through one of the drainage holes in the pot, and then it goes through your fleece. So this method works pretty well. So I'm going to put another one there and another one at the end, and then we'll put the fleece on, and I'll just hold it down with some bricks. So there we go. It's not a fantastic job, but it will do the job, and it's just to keep any frost off the plants themselves if possible. If the plants were bigger, I would make a much better job of that, but because they're so small, then as long as they're off, not touching the fleece, they're going to be fine. The other onions that I put in, the onion sets, they've already got fleece over them anyway, and that's to stop rodents really from digging them up. Potato pots I'm not concerned about at 4 degrees because I've only just planted them. They're not showing, so they're still way down in the compost, so I shouldn't have any issues there. Everything in the cold frame I've given a good water, and I shall close that up and everything should be fine in there. I could do with it warming up a bit though. I'd like to put the peas out, and I very nearly did the other day, and I thought, no, I'll just hold fire for a bit. Even though they're fairly cold tolerant, it's going to be difficult to fleece them up where I'm going to put them, so, but they're getting quite tall now, they need to go out. Maybe next week. The garlic in the centre there, I'm just going to leave that. That's been through some pretty cold weather and it always just seems to carry on, so I'm not going to worry about that. That can just do its thing. So there we are, guys. Bit of potting on, pricking out, just wrapping things up for the few cold nights that we're probably going to have. And thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.